On a warm summer evening in Charlotte, North Carolina, a young woman boarded a city train with nothing more on her mind than getting home after a long day. For her, public transit was a pathway to independence, to safety, and to the promise of a life she had fought so hard to rebuild. But just 4 minutes into her journey, that promise was shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. This is the story of Iryna Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee who escaped a war zone only to meet her end on an American train. And it's the story of her killer, Carlos Brown Jr., a man with a long history of crime, mental illness, and missed opportunities for intervention. Iryna had fled the chaos of Russia's war in Ukraine, leaving behind destruction, uncertainty, and trauma. For her, America represented hope. She landed in Charlotte, where she picked up shifts at a local pizzeria, saving money and planning her future. Friends described her as gentle, creative, and deeply compassionate, especially toward animals. She had dreams of becoming a veterinary assistant, and she was known to carry stray cats off the street to nurse them back to health. For Iryna, riding the city's Lynx Blue Line light rail was routine. It was affordable, practical, and seemed safe. She had survived air raids and bombings back home. How dangerous could a train ride in America be? But the answer, as she would tragically discover, was very dangerous. Sitting only a few rows away from her that evening was 34-year-old Carlos Brown Jr. On the surface, he appeared restless, distracted, and disheveled. But what no one on that train knew was that Brown's life was a ticking time bomb. Brown had been arrested at least 14 times since 2011. His charges ranged from armed robbery and assault to breaking and entering, and even the bizarre misuse of the 911 system. But behind the criminal charges was something even darker. Brown suffered from schizophrenia. His mother had spoken publicly, saying her son should never have been left on the streets. Judges had ordered mental health evaluations, but they were either delayed or never fully completed. Each release from jail only put him back into a society that was not prepared to treat him, and a society he was increasingly unable to navigate. Psychologically, Brown fit the profile of someone trapped between untreated mental illness and habitual criminal behavior. Experts often describe this as a dual diagnosis crisis, where mental illness fuels instability, while repeated arrests harden antisocial patterns. By August of 2025, Brown was homeless, drifting through Charlotte with no clear support system, no stability, and a dangerous weapon tucked into his clothing. The surveillance footage would later reveal a chilling sequence. At 6:19 p.m., Iryna boarded the train at East West Boulevard Station. She sat down, pulled out her phone, and looked like any other young commuter. Brown boarded soon after, pacing slightly before taking a seat just rows away. For almost 4 minutes, nothing happened. No words were exchanged, no confrontation, just the hum of the train against its tracks. Then, without warning, Brown reached into his hoodie, pulled out a folding pocket knife, and lunged. Iryna barely had time to react. He stabbed her multiple times, one blow striking her neck. Passengers screamed. Some rushed toward the doors, frozen in shock, unable to process the brutality unfolding in front of them. Within moments, Iryna collapsed. Her short American dream ended right there on the train floor. Brown stepped off calmly at the next stop, blending into the crowd. But police, alerted by frantic 911 calls, quickly moved in. Within minutes, he was in custody. As news of the killing spread, the community reeled. How could a young refugee, someone who had already escaped a war, be murdered on a train in a US city? And how could a man with a documented history of violence and schizophrenia be free to roam the streets with a weapon? Psychologists point to a dangerous cocktail. Untreated schizophrenia often manifests with paranoia, delusions, and sudden aggression. When combined with a history of violent crime and no access to consistent treatment, the risk of explosive violence skyrockets. Brown's case wasn't unique. Across the United States, mental health institutions have been gutted, leaving prisons and city streets as the default holding areas for people with severe psychiatric disorders. In Brown's case, those systemic cracks had a name, a face, and a fatal outcome: Iryna Zarutska. Brown was charged with first-degree murder under North Carolina law, but federal prosecutors stepped in as well. Because the killing happened on public transportation, he also faces a federal charge: committing an act causing death on a mass transportation system. That charge alone could mean life in prison or the death penalty. For Iryna's family back in Ukraine, no punishment will bring her back. They remembered her as a heart of gold, a young woman who had survived Putin's bombs only to fall victim to a knife in Charlotte. Her killing sparked outrage across the US and abroad. Politicians blamed soft-on-crime policies. Advocates called for mental health reform, and transit authorities in Charlotte promised new security measures. But for many, the case is more than politics. It's a human tragedy, a reminder that when systems fail, lives are lost. Iryna Zarutska's story is both heartbreaking and haunting. She was a survivor, a dreamer, and someone who believed she had finally found safety. Her killer's story is a cautionary tale of what happens when untreated mental illness collides with a revolving door justice system. And together, their lives tell us something even more disturbing: safety is never guaranteed, not even for those who need it most. Thank you for watching this story. If you found it meaningful, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. It helps us share more stories like Iryna's and continue exploring the human side of true crime.